Once again to the program, Dr. Walid Phares. Morning, Dr. Phares, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I saw you on an hour earlier, an hour ago with Connell and Dagan, but I was watching back in the makeup room, but they didn't have the sound on.
Oh.
So it looked like you looked good and had a photograph of you there, and I assume Connell and Dagan had good questions for you, but there's no way to know, of course. I did read page 304. What's your book called again?
The Coming Revolution: Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East. We had a session on it in December.
I should have read it when you were on with it then, shouldn't I?
That was a good idea, yeah.
Tell me what you said.
Well, basically, I projected that we are going to see uprisings, and in Egypt, we are going to be seeing the youth in the streets, and the Muslim Brotherhood trying to take over, the army that will become the maker or breaker of the deal, and eventually, is going to be a big change in Egypt.
So that most of the youth in the street weren't even alive when Sadat was assassinated, were they?
No. This is really a second generation after Sadat. These are people who were reading and listening to bloggers. This whole revolt that we see on the streets now, about 1 million people, a week ago started with a Facebook call that gathered about 80,000 faces that never happened before in the Arab world or in Egypt, calling for going to the streets, demonstrating, calling for Mubarak to leave. But, of course, when that happens, you had other hundreds of thousands of people who join in calling for change.
Now, the United States obviously likes Mubarak, but the people don't. And I understand why the United States has liked him for 30 years. Why don't the people like him?
Because he is one of the authoritarian leaders in the region, and he's not alone, who on the outside is really rendering service to the United States, confronting in the past the Soviet Union, after that Iran and Al-Qaeda. On the inside, obviously, he has not allowed a number of candidates to really run, of political parties to be free, 32 years since 1981 or so. But the issue is that real power in Egypt is the institution of the state, at the center of which you have the army. So he was strong all that time because the army was backing him, which means that if the United States can continue to cut the deal with the army, if the public is happy with the fact that the army is protecting the demonstrators, and if a government is established whereby you're going to have multiple political parties, then that could work. But it's a long shot still.
How old is he?
He's 81 or so.
Or so, huh? So.
Yeah, he could be 82.
So he's on the back end of having any sense anyway.
He tried, he tried a few years ago to push his son, Jamal, to become his successor. It didn't work then. Then this year again, when he announced, or when somebody announced his party, that his son is going to run again, then that was it. And people told him, no, we had enough. 3 decades, that's enough. The problem here is going to be who is going to come to government later. And the concern in Washington and around the world is not really the multiple political parties. It's going to look like Italy, a lot of debate and discussions. It's one organization called the Muslim Brotherhood. Now that means business, because if the Muslim Brotherhood is back into public life and does not commit to the institutions of the Republic, but they want to establish some sort of Taliban-like regime, then we have a serious problem.
I read this morning, we're talking with Dr. Walid Phares, who is advisor to the Anti-Terrorism Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives and is a Fox advises folks at Fox News on these various issues. I read in the probably the Times or someplace that the Muslim Brotherhood had orchestrated this, or at least was attempting to orchestrate this coalition that would include Mohammed al-Baradei and various other groups. One, is that true? And if it is true, and they're able to put together a coalition, and let's say al-Baradei emerges as a new leader in Egypt, what kind of how much influence will the Muslim Brotherhood have?
They will have a lot, the Muslim Brotherhood actually, among all political parties outside the regime and outside the army, is the most organized, efficient network. You know, they were founded in the mid-1920s, and they have been in the opposition back and forth for many, many years. They were banned by Mubarak because they tried to seize the power multiple times. They are behind what we call the radicalization, meaning many people who were in the Muslim Brotherhood ended up becoming jihadists. One of them is a well-known, infamous guy, Zawahiri, the number 2 of Al-Qaeda, the number 2 after bin Laden. But the majority of the Muslim Brotherhood inside Egypt are not armed. However, they will basically try to seize the schools and do like the Taliban have done in a way in Afghanistan, radicalizing. Al-Baradei said he will include them in a coalition. He is too weak not to be able to include them. Those who really can stop the Muslim Brotherhood are the army, the armed forces. If Mubarak goes and Al-Baradei comes, well, yes, you're going to have the possibility that the Muslim Brotherhood are going to getting more and more influence because they are backed from the outside. They get petrodollars. They have connections with branches around the Arab world. They have fundraisers, including in the United States. We had a legal case a few years ago, the Holy Land Foundation, which founders basically were Muslim Brotherhood.
Where's Al-Baradei coming from? What's his deal?
Al-Baradei is a middle-class guy, educated. He is basically independent-minded, but he takes into consideration, whatever he sees around him. He doesn't have his own mind in a sense that if he sees that the Muslim Brotherhood are demanding this, he'll give them 10%. If he sees that the Communist Party wants that, so he negotiates with many people. I spoke to many Egyptians, young people, those who actually launched the demonstrations the beginning of last week. They say that Al-Baradei is an interim person. He is not going to be this charismatic leader who is going to be there for the new Egypt, but he's someone who they can trust. He's known internationally, so they feel that he will be a coalition builder. No, it's not more than that.
Well, if he's not the man, who is the man?
We don't know. Yesterday on TV, I was asking, in Arab TV actually, I was asking, where are those organizers of the demonstrations? Where is the Lesh Walesa in this whole thing, or the Vaclav Havel? They were behind that push. It seems that they're still afraid to move to the front lines because things are not sure in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood will target them in the future, and they're still afraid of the Mubarak regime because he's still in the country. The thing that the people are waiting for in the streets is that the newly selected vice president and speaker, who is now the prime minister, would make a statement, would say, look, Mr. Mubarak has a strategy to leave. He's leaving anyway next September. So the people in the demonstrations, I assume, are going to continue to be in the streets until such a declaration will be made. And I think Mubarak is delaying this. He hopes that somehow he will find a way to stay as long as possible.
Well, the people in the street, they want more than simply to smoke dope, watch porn, and go to McDonald's, right? What do they want?
Oh, actually, that's a lot of things that they want. The majority of the people, 80%, and that's big, really want, first of all, multi-party system, meaning you have multiple political parties.
Yeah.
Then what they want is globalization. They want to be able to have what we have here, at least half of it or quarter of it, and then, get jobs and all that. 20%, though, which is also still significant, are militants, either followers of the Muslim Brotherhood that want to create an Islamic state,
Yeah.
or those, radicals, ex-followers of Nasser, the leader from the 60s, who wants, fighting Israel and radical ideas as well.
Wonder why the military won't crack down on these demonstrations.
The military, majority of the conscripts are, from this society. It's unlikely that they would do. Besides, the high-ranking officials of the army knows that, and they've seen it before, what happened in Tunisia and elsewhere, that if they issue such orders, today's society in Egypt is connected. There will be immediately Facebook, the international media is there. There is no way, there's no future of cracking down. What most likely could happen is that the army now is ensuring security, and the middle class in Egypt, which is part of this, wants security. So they trust the army. They need now to form an interim government. Mubarak to tell them what is his, future CV going to look like, where he's going to go, what he's going to do. And then there will be an isolation of the radicals. If the radicals are isolated, then the army can take care of them. But if the radicals are embedded in the masses, that would be a mistake.
What do you think will happen ultimately when the smoke clears?
You're going to have a long time where Egypt is going to move from one government to another government. It's not going to be that stable anymore. So that's the price of not having an authoritarian leader.
How's that going to affect Israel, I wonder?
Yeah, well, if the Muslim Brotherhood basically are going to have more power, guess what? They are going to mobilize against Israel. My fear and concern is that the Muslim Brotherhood will create some sort of front, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then you're going to have the big risk of a confrontation on the border with Gaza. But that's chapter 2 and 3. Now they're not talking about it. They only want to be part of government.
What a mess. All right, Dr. Phares, thank you very much. Illuminating, interesting stuff. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Dr.